Hello and welcome to another honorable mention from the best games period. I'm your host, Jack Gardner, and with me this week are just me this week, life being what it is. Sometimes your usual hosts can't all get together and talk about the best games period. However, we always want to make sure we got a little something for you. So, this week I'm going to be giving a shout out to a game that I believe deserves a shot on this show, and maybe at some point we'll do a full episode on it, but I know that my co-hosts, Jeremy Brown and Daniel Jones, have not played this game and probably won't get a chance to play it anytime soon because it's kind of an older game and doesn't seem like it's going to be coming to modern consoles anytime soon. But here it is. Ace Combat 5, The Unsung War. So, what is this game? Well, the Ace Combat series for a very long time, since the early days of the PlayStation 1, it has its roots in arcade flight action. So you can kind of think like off-the-rails Star Fox in the very early days of the Ace Combat series. But over time, it's kind of developed into something more sophisticated, and it's actually really interesting if you play them in order, how the series has evolved over time. And there are a few other Ace Combat games after Ace Combat 5. Ace Combat 6, Fires of Liberation, is a pretty respectable title as well. Ace Combat Assault Horizon, I didn't like that game very much. It has good parts, but on the whole, can probably skip that one. Then there's the online title, Ace Combat Infinity, which I haven't played as much as I would like, but it's a respectable game. It's just not a fully fledged entry into the series, which is a little disappointing because that's kind of what a lot of fans of the series, myself included, wanted. As far as I can tell, Ace Combat 7 is really the return to form that I've been looking for ever since I played Ace Combat 5. Now, Ace Combat 5 released in 2004 for the PlayStation 2, and it released as a PlayStation 2 exclusive. So, what exactly makes it stand out from the Ace Combat franchise as a whole? Ace Combats 1, 2, and 3 were kind of light on story, and Ace Combat 4 began the world of Ace Combat was kind of developed in the initial series run, okay? But it was, for the most part, still an arcade game. It was meant to be kind of a throwback to scoring points and getting through tough levels, and that was about it. In Ace Combat 4, they started trying to tell much more sophisticated stories in their games, and I don't want to put down Ace Combat 4 in this podcast, but Ace Combat 5 really took that storytelling and perfected it. It did that in a number of really interesting ways. For the most part, a lot of the storytelling was done in-game over the airplane radio. You'd have members of your squadron chattering over the radio and talking to each other and, making fun of each other, laughing, telling jokes, calling out enemies, talking about what's going on in the dogfights or on the ground fighting below. It really ratchets up the tension. It's really interesting and engaging, and you get to know all of these squadron mates really well by the end of the game. And there are surprisingly touching moments in a game that has no in-game character models for any of the humans. So basically in-game, everyone's just a plane. And saying that, I know that sounds kind of weird, but basically the only time you actually see human beings in Ace Combat 5 are during these fantastically animated and gorgeous cutscenes that, at the time, it's 2004, these were stunningly realistic cutscenes. Like, the visual fidelity was amazing. Obviously now they look a little bit aged and dated, but I mean, even so, going back and looking at them, they look pretty good. And the same goes for the rest of the game as well. The major flaw, I guess you could say, in the visual design of Ace Combat 5 is that when you get close to the ground, everything looks terrible. All of the ground stuff and the textures are they're just really bad. However, on the flip side, the airplanes look phenomenal. Like, oh my goodness, the planes look good. And the lighting effects and the sound effects are just on point. And I'm actually going to be playing a little bit of the soundtrack right here, just so you can get a sense of what the game sounds like while you're flying around and dogfighting. Easily one of the best soundtracks for a game that honestly has no business being as cinematic and amazing as it is. So enjoy, and then I'll keep talking after. Jeez, that is... The soundtrack gives me chills. I love listening to it. It's so good. And that was just a small portion of one of the songs. It's really just a pleasure to listen to. And not only that, we need to talk about voice acting. The voice acting, and I haven't played it in Japanese, so I don't know about the Japanese voice acting, but the English voice actors they got to play the various characters in this game do a phenomenal job and really sell the drama that's going on. And that's a key component because Ace Combat 5 has so many bonkers plot developments going on. I don't think I can even really spoil the game for anyone. I mean, it's been out for 13 years now, so, I mean, you had your shot at playing it. There are going to be a few spoilers in here. I'll try not to spoil too much of Ace Combat 5, but it takes place in this world that has come to be known as Strange Real. That's the casual name for it, and it's called that because it has a lot of similarities to our own world and political strife and events, but all of the continent shapes and the countries are different and have different names. And despite that, it still manages to be a very topical series. You know what, I'm not even going to try and summarize this story too much. I'm going to paint it in some broad strokes. These two countries end up going to war with each other. It seems like it's basically an unprovoked assault, and both sides are pointing fingers at the other. And as you're just a pilot, you know, you're trying to fill your orders and doing the best you can. And so you're this untrained rookie, and you're flying around, and you're gunning down enemy planes and bombing ships and bunkers and helping to assault fortresses. And it's really interesting and engaging, and very rarely does it feel like levels were reused. So each time you fly into a mission, it's different. Not only that, there's also an element of choice in these games. So at certain points in these radio conversations that your squadron is having, they'll pose questions to you, and you have an option of how you want to respond, and that can actually decide where the entire campaign, the entire mission goes, which is pretty interesting in and of itself. And also, one of the most memorable moments I have from this game in particular, and there are a lot of memorable moments, there's one mission where you are supposed to flee from this squadron, this enemy squadron that finds you as you're flying above these mountains. And you're supposed to flee. However, you can stay and fight this enemy squadron that has like 50-some planes. And it's an overwhelming fight, but I love when games give you the option to stay and fight even though it seems hopeless, and if you can actually manage to get through it, the game rewards you. It's really... it feels good. Feels good, man. But, like, that's not even one of the most bonker things that happens in this game, because in the world of Strange Real, they have this Metal Gear Solid-esque desire to make super weapons. And so throughout Ace Combat 5, you encounter several of these, and they're incredible encounters. So there's one against like a gigantic submarine that keeps appearing and reappearing, and it's shooting drones out into the sky to try and shoot you down, and you gotta somehow figure out how you're gonna blow up that submarine. There's another encounter where you have to blow up this basically super plane. It's like a super aircraft carrier plane. And there's another mission where you have to help shoot down this combat satellite that's flying down from outer space. And there's even another mission where you have to... it's like taken straight out of Star Wars. You have to fly into this underground mountain shaft and take out the core of this facility before it's able to launch some nuclear weapons. And it is a really intense, nerve-wracking scene because your squad mates are all chattering with you, and like one of the enemies gets on the radio and is taunting you and stuff. It's all very... it gets really tense and surprisingly emotionally engaging for a game that only has you flying planes. In that way, I see Ace Combat as kind of maybe with Ace Combat 7 it'll be picking up the torch from where Metal Gear Solid left it. and kind of tackling these really topical issues about warfare and the nature of the world, and kind of waxing philosophical. It from the trailer, it certainly seems like they're going to be doing that with drone AI pilots versus human pilots, and I'm gonna go out on a limb and guess that at some point those AI drones come back to bite whoever's making them. But this podcast is about Ace Combat 5, and it's just really good. Like, the story too is strangely poetic. One of the central themes of Ace Combat 5 revolves around this children's story / poem about Rosgrees, which is this beast that awakens every so often in times of strife to rampage around the world. And at one point in the story, the player and their squadron essentially fake their own deaths and then have to go rogue from their country because they find out the forces behind their orders are actually agents from a smaller nation that lost a war many years ago, and so they take on the name Rosgrees, and it's all very, despite all of this badness and war and death, there's something really hopeful about Ace Combat 5, and I can't quite put my finger on it, but it leaves you feeling good. It leaves you feeling like the future is going to be a better place. And I don't know. I feel like maybe we could use a little bit of that. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to what Project Aces does with Ace Combat 7. It's been a long time. But maybe while you wait for that game to come out, you can dig out a PlayStation 2, or I don't know if it's on PS Now, if you can stream it. But figure out a way to play Ace Combat 5 The Unsung War, because it's definitely worth your time, and it'll reward your investment. And, in case you're not interested in all that story crap, there is an arcade mode that you can play and go through just escalating scenarios that are more and more difficult. And I mean, there are just tons of planes to unlock. There's a lot of fun to be had. You can outfit planes with different equipment. It's really good. Really enjoyable experience that I'm glad I had. And I wish more people would have it, because then we'd get more Ace Combat games. Yeah! But, yeah, thanks for listening. I know this is kind of on the shorter end of episodes, but, we'll be back next week with a full episode that I'm sure will be full of some fireworks and possibly hurt feelings and harsh words when we talk about Half-Life 2. Just Half-Life 2, not Half-Life 2 Episode 1, Half-Life 2 Episode 2. We're just talking about Half-Life 2. And I know Daniel has a lot of strong feelings for Half-Life 2, and I have a lot of strong feelings about Half-Life 2, and I'm not really sure how Jeremy feels about Half-Life 2. So he's going to be the wild card next week. But thanks for listening. Hope you stick around. And right now I'm going to just plug Extra Life a little bit. And basically, if you haven't heard of Extra Life before, it is this awesome charity that benefits Children's Miracle Network hospitals. And everyone who signs up can raise money for an individual Children's Miracle Network hospital. You can actually choose which hospital you want to support, so you know where your money is going, and 100% of all that money goes directly to that hospital to pay for the medical expenses of sick and injured kids, and typically for families who can't afford those payments. So it's going to the kids who actually need this the most. And on top of that, it's not just like, oh, you're raising money, but you actually get to... The whole idea of Extra Life is that you raise money by playing games. So whereas some people get people to pledge money to them for running a 5K or walking around a track, not everyone can do that. Not everyone wants to do that, but everyone loves playing games. And so every year, Extra Life puts on a 24-hour video game marathon. This happens every year. I'm not entirely sure when it is this year. I really need to look that up. But you can find out more at extra-life.org. And you can also get more involved in the community side of things if you want to connect with local Extra Lifers and people who just really love and are passionate about helping kids. You can head over to the community.extra-life.org site and meet with your local guildies, introduce yourself, say hi, learn more about what Extra Life is. You can also read a number of really interesting articles. Recently, Marcus Stewart has been covering PAX South for us and has been writing some really interesting things about that. Also, you can find this very podcast over there as well. So, take a few minutes, check out extra-life.org. You can find out more about the charity there, and you can also sign up. And also maybe pop your head into the community site and see what our lovely community has for you, because they are lovely and handsome. And with that, you can find this podcast on Twitter at bestgamesperiod. You can download the show on SoundCloud as well as iTunes. And please, if you are so inclined, if you enjoy this show, please leave a review. That helps us get seen by more people on iTunes. It's very helpful. And yeah, you can also download the show, as I said, over on the community.extra-life.org site. We are also on Game Informer. You can find us a variety of places. And we also have a Patreon. So you can find us over on patreon.com/bestgamesperiod. We're just looking to get a few bucks every month to help us keep running this show, because it does cost a little bit of money to run the most bare bones version of it. But if it's a choice between us and Extra Life, support Extra Life. That said, thank you so much for listening, and we'll be back next week with our raucous episode 52 of the Best Games Period, where we talk about Half-Life 2. And, see you on the flippity-dippity.